Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Discussion Freaking Streams, people. We are back. Hopefully, y'all can hear me. It looks like my mic is on. It looks like we got people in the chat as well, too. That's super exciting. But hi, everyone. Welcome back to freaking Discussion Streams. I'm so excited to be back. And as you can see on the screen, who could this be in person with a face and a background and everything? Who is this strange creature on my screen? What could this this cryptid be? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Ed has never seen my face before. Like, we've actually met and hung out, but we went to school together. But that entire time, I wore a mask.
Right, he hasn't actually seen your face.
Specifically so that in the event that I ever co-hosted a live stream, it would be his first experience of seeing my face.
Yeah. This is all new for everyone. So many folks are here. Oh my gosh, it's so good to see everyone. It's so good to be back with discussion streams. We've been thinking about, Tom, we've been talking about bringing back discussion streams for a while, and we were like, what show do we want to talk about? Do we want to like start our Buffy streams? That's something that we wanted to do, which we are going to do. Don't get me wrong. We are going to do the Buffy streams. But then we saw Fionna and Cake, and I think like when I was looking forward to Fionna Cake when it first got announced, when the trailers first came out, I was like, oh, cool, more Adventure Time. I love Adventure Time. I grew up with the show. I am a big fan of the show. It was like one of the first cartoons, I feel like for our generation, it was one of the first cartoons that like we got like really obsessed with and really into. And
I mean, it spans multiple generations at this point.
It's so long.
But we'll get to that in due course.
Yes, we will get to that because I have stuff to talk about. But I think like when I first decided to watch it, I actually was like not thinking of watching it when it first aired, because like for me personally, I prefer to like binge shows, right? And so I was like, oh, I'll wait for more episodes to come out and then I'll like watch it all together or something like that. And then you also like before it came out, when we talked about it, I was like, oh, hey, are you looking forward to it? And you were like, not really. It's like not really something I'm too whatever about.
I'd been rewatching Adventure Time already. I was like 5 seasons in. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. I mean, how could I have possibly known they were going to announce that they were doing Fionna and Cake? But I was like 5 seasons into Adventure Time when the announcement happened. So I've actually finished rewatching it in full. So nice. Hopefully I can be helpful in that regard. But I went into it like I'm not really all that interested. Fionna and Cake were never characters I enormously cared about. Specifically, they're like non-characters, and they're not really meant to be. They're just like goofy fan fiction characters made by an insane old man. And like I was like, yeah, this feels like fan servicey. Do you know what I mean? Like it felt
sure.
Boy was I wrong. But it felt looking at the trailers, it felt very fan servicey, like, oh, this is what the fans want. They want to see Fionna and Cake. People have been asking for that for years.
Right.
And they have given it to us, not in the way I think anybody expected or anybody knew that they wanted. But like, I went into it when the announcement happened, I had pretty low expectations. I wasn't super excited. The cabinet has shuffled an enormous amount, but we'll get to that as well. And then they started to show us more. They started to kind of drip feed more. I think the initial point where I was beginning to get a little more interested is when we got to see more of who was involved and like who was going to be in it.
For sure.
And it's like, oh, so we've got this cross-dimensional thing where we've got Simon Petrikov and we've got Fionna and we've got Cake and we've also got Gumball, but his name's not Gumball anymore.
Gary.
And we've got Princess Bubblegum. That was another big thing for me, was like Princess Gumball has always been a pale imitation of Bubblegum, who is my favorite character in the show. She's also my favorite vocal performance in the show. One of my favorite vocal performances of all time. I think Hynden Walsh crushes it. And like, but then I watched it. I think I sent you a message that was something to the effect of, me before watching Fionna and Cake, and I was like, I don't know, I'm not feeling it. Not that interested. I think they should let Adventure Time just die already. And then me after watching it, and I just sent a gif of a man crying.
Yeah, so to say that it kind of caught us by surprise with how much we have been enjoying it and how much we've been resonating with it, I think is a little bit of an understatement. But yeah, so we watched the shows. We really liked it, and we're like, you know what? We were thinking about bringing back discussion streams anyway. Let's just do Fionna and Cake discussion streams because like we have so much to say about the show, and we're trying out a little bit of a new format this time, a new style. You know, as you can see, obviously Tom is on the screen. We don't have the actual episode.
Sorry about that, guys.
Oh my gosh, no, we are so happy to see you. And we don't have the actual episode on the screen itself. We're not really gonna go beat by beat, and we're not gonna really go through the episode like we have in the past. This show, like at least these first couple episodes that we watched so far, in my opinion, what is actually happening in them is like the least interesting thing. That is like what the show is about. And you know, I have like kind of a list of notes of things that I want to talk about here in my, oh my god, I didn't mean to pull up my Google Doc to cover your face, but here's my Google Doc.
Well, maybe the Google, maybe people want to see the Google Doc more than they want to see my face.
People want to see my
somebody do a poll. Don't actually do a poll.
No, don't do that. No, so I have like a bunch of stuff that I want to talk about. Do we want to like just go do like a quick summary of like the episodes first, or do you have something that you want to start off with?
I feel like before we actually get into the episode proper, there's so much pretext.
Sure, yeah.
There's so much pretext to talk about. Like Adventure Time is one of the most, and it's going to sound like I'm exaggerating saying this, I mean this completely sincerely. Adventure Time is one of the most important pieces of postmodern media ever made. And I mean that completely sincerely. It sounds like a joke. Adventure Time really caught a generational zeitgeist and then just kept going with that for like multiple generations of TV viewers. Where it ran from what, 2010 to like 2017. I don't remember off the top of my head. It ran for a long time. Here we are like 14 years later, pushing 15, and it's back. You know, it's like it never really leaves the collective consciousness. And while I would have been completely happy before seeing this for Fionna and Cake to have never been a thing, you said to me that you think, and I agree with you now, like I now see how wrong I was. Like Adventure Time is one of those things that's so broad, and so there's so much going on in Adventure Time, so many moving pieces, so many like glimpses of things that we don't see a full picture of, that there's so much ground to explore outside of the adventures of Finn and Jake that we see in the series proper. You know, I mean, hell, some of the most popular episodes of the show don't even involve Finn and Jake in any capacity.
Right.
But like Adventure Time happened, it feels like it really captured a generational zeitgeist with its bizarre blend of like postmodern absurdist humor and like almost Zen Buddhist philosophy, where it begins to get into realms of like reincarnation is a theme that comes up a lot.
Yeah. This idea of like cycles repeating, right?
Yeah. And souls just being this thing with a predestined journey that jumps from body to body from, you know, over thousands and thousands of years, and like selfhood and our place within the grander scheme of things. They have that whole episode about the fucking food chain.
I love that episode.
Great episode. So weird. They've got that episode, Jake the Brick, I think it's called.
Where he's just like a brick in a house.
It's just a brick in
waiting
a house
for it to fall down.
It transforms very quickly into Planet Earth with David Attenborough. But then on top of that, you've also got this fact that Adventure Time really kickstarted an entire movement which arguably may have already ended by now, right? Because I know Flapjack is technically Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. I've never actually seen it. If we were to talk literally about who was working on what, Flapjack came along, and that was the starting point of a lot of the big names who would go on to Adventure Time and on to other things. And,
yeah, I think a lot of people think of Flapjack as like the origin for kind of the modern.
And that's true, but I don't think Flapjack is truly where it begins. I think Adventure Time is where it begins, because Adventure Time, even if only by virtue of its raw, meteoric success,
right,
suddenly woke studios and networks to this idea that creator-driven animation, or auteur-driven, if you want to be weird about it, animation, there was a lot of value to be had in that. And all of a sudden they started giving lots and lots of chances to a whole wide heterogeneous pool of different ideas. And so what begins with Adventure Time, then turns into Steven Universe, and like Gravity Falls, and you've got Craig of the Creek, and you've got Regular Show, you've got Over the Garden Wall, you've got, in the later stages, we've got Amphibia, we've got Big City Greens, we've got the Owl House, we've got, what else? We've got Summer Camp Island, like a whole just pool of really weird, unique cartoons that are driven by
a little show called Infinity Train.
A little show called Infinity Train. There's another one. How can I forget that one? But like, it begat this whole movement of studios going like, what if we actually took our foot off the pedal for a second and let the creators breathe life into our network's repertoire.
Right.
And that to me is so interesting and so valuable, and led to me what I feel is a real golden age. Like,
totally.
I only wish I was younger so I could have been growing up with shows like Steven Universe and
totally.
shows like Adventure Time. But I didn't even start watching Adventure Time properly until university, and same with Steven Universe and the rest of them. I didn't really get into them until then, but all of that's been and gone. Like the Owl House, the ending of the Owl House really felt like, I don't know if it's the end of that era, but the general idea behind art movements is that they usually only last about a decade,
right?
Give or take a few years, and it's already been that,
right?
And the Owl House feels like it was already at the end of that tether, because the creative leeway they had on the Owl House was pretty strict. It wasn't necessarily as free-flowing as you get the impression Adventure Time was. And throughout a lot of these shows, even with shows like Steven Universe, Adventure Time was running all throughout those other shows going on. Like, people would come and go from Adventure Time. You've got this constantly shuffling cabinet of creative minds, which really adds to the success, I think, of Adventure Time, because it made Adventure Time this thing that was constantly changing. It was always in flux. It was never one thing. Julia Pott and her contributions to Adventure Time are fundamentally super different to the kind of contributions you see with Patrick McHale and with Rebecca Sugar, and they're very very much more emotional, much more interpersonal style of writing. And so what does that mean now that we've kind of been and gone through this whole multiple generations of cartoon watchers, and Adventure Time's over, we've had Distant Lands, for better or worse, and now here we are, people who grew up with Adventure Time are now like adults. People who are into Adventure Time in their late teens are like us.
And we're like, that is something I want to talk more about. Yeah.
Where does that leave us now? Is Fionna and Cake intended for us? Is it intended for new viewers? Is it both? What the hell is going on? What is Fionna and Cake in a world where the art movement that Adventure Time started is arguably already over, and yet here we are.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point. I didn't think about that in terms of the timing, but I have thought a lot about it in terms of the audience. And actually, like, even before we get into the episodes proper, actually, that was kind of like the first big kind of bucket I had in my notes, was talking about the audience and this show kind of being really smart in understanding its audience, like, extremely well. And if you don't have any more to say about your point, I think we can kind of talk more about that.
Totally.
If that's cool. I do just want to acknowledge the chat really quick. Magical asks, did you see that Rebecca Sugar is returning to social media? And yes, we did see that, and we're very excited, and we
spent about 20 minutes just screaming.
That's right.
About 20 minutes just screaming. We didn't even breathe. It was pretty much just one long...
Yeah, we almost passed out.
Uninterrupted scream. I died.
Tom literally died.
I actually died. And yet here I am, defying death once again.
But yeah, we're super excited to see what she's cooking up.
She could literally do anything and I would love it.
Right. Oh my gosh. Totally. Okay. So I want to talk about audience and about how this show, Fionna and Cake, is just super just keenly aware of its audience. And you brought this up and touched on it, right? This idea of like, well, is Fionna and Cake like meant for, you know, us, the Adventure Time viewers? Is it meant for new viewers? And I think, and someone did ask me this question. Someone asked me, like, can I watch Fionna and Cake without having watched Adventure Time?
No.
And I think I can definitively say no, because I can't imagine, like, for me, and especially for me too, because like it's been a while since I watched Adventure Time. I didn't rewatch the show like a lot of people did. So it's been like, it's kind of like in the back of my memory. I don't really remember what happened at the end other than some vague things, right? But this like Adventure Time after a certain point had this like emotional core to it that I think is kind of being almost extrapolated out and kind of laid bare. And that's like what Fionna and Cake is almost about, right? Like just like this emotional underbelly that that's like kind of getting turned around and like exposed fully, right? And like I think you even said it just to me when you first watched it, that like Fionna and Cake almost kind of feels like Steven Universe Future did to Steven Universe, right? That's where it's like kind of this end cap epilogue kind of thing, and you really do need to understand like where the characters have been so far in order to like see where they're going. And it's like, yeah, you can watch it on your own, but like you're not gonna
get it.
You're not gonna get it. And I think like something there's two things I want to talk about in terms of audience and in terms of Fionna and Cake understanding its audience. First of all, I want to talk about this idea of aging shows and aging characters along with its audience, right? So Steven Universe Future, as I mentioned, you know, like Steven is older in Future, and you know he's dealing with his trauma, and he's like, you know,
he's a fucking mess.
Yeah, he's a fucking mess, right? And I feel like that is an example of a character who has like grown up and aged with the audience of the show, right? And that's the thing with Future even too, right? Like Future came out not even that long after the original series ended, right? But compare
run for like 7 years,
right? But I mean, but compare that now to Fionna and Cake, which is airing now, what, like 5-ish years after the original show has ended, or like several years?
Long time, yeah.
Like a long time, right?
Pendleton Ward has done several things in between, including Distant Lands, but also the Midnight Gospel as well came and went in the time that Adventure Time has been finished.
Yeah.
And it's, there's a lot of maturation going on in general, because on one hand, you've got the maturation of the audience who are now older. But on the other hand, you've got the maturation of the people who made the show.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Pendleton Ward is not the same man that he was 14 years ago. You watch the first episode of Adventure Time, the first season of Adventure Time. It's so like ridiculous and silly, and it has a gradual slow crawl into the realms of the sort of themes that you can see beginning to interest Pendleton Ward in terms of like spirituality and stuff like that. Stuff that would really come out in full force in the Midnight Gospel, which is like full-blown podcasts put to animation on the topic of like reincarnation and death and morality.
Right,
and
exactly. Yeah, totally.
Nature of being and like crazy stuff like that. A beautiful show, really wonderful and interesting and unique.
Right.
But now we're several years on from that. Like, who is Pendleton Ward now? What's going on? What is he interested in?
Yeah.
Shifted focus entirely to a character who I can't help but wonder if he's just more interested in now, being Simon.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely.
If that character of Simon, you know, in the same way that Stephen grew into this like socially maladjusted young man, Simon is an old man, thousands of years out of time,
who was like not even in his right state of mind for like decades. Like
being in a catatonic state.
Exactly.
Everything has changed without him. Everyone has moved on.
Yeah. So like you're saying, like Pendleton Ward has grown older and like maybe the things that he finds interesting are different now. We as the Adventure Time audience have grown much older, right? Like I know you said you didn't watch Adventure Time growing up. Like I watched the show like in high school, right? Like I watched it like with my friends, so it was like a part of my, I guess, childhood, right? In a lot of way, my adolescence. So like this was a show we grew up with. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how the show has matured with its audience. And as you were saying too, the creators have matured and are exploring these different characters. And of course there's these surface level things of the show that have like, are kind of showing us like, okay, yeah, we're getting more mature. We're you know, growing older with our audience, right? We have like, the blood in the episode, right, when Finn is like fighting that giant fish monster, like that wasn't in the original Adventure Time.
He says like suck my nuts or something.
Yeah, he says like suck my nuts, and I think like Fiona says damn at one point too, right? And so we're getting like curse words in a lot of way. And then at one point like Simon is drinking alcohol, and so like there's all these like little things, right, that are showing us that we're growing up and maturing with our audience. But I think even like more than these surface level details, there's like, we're like you're saying, right, we're exploring a different character. We're exploring Simon, who's like so much different than Finn, right? And like, okay, I'm gonna say something a little controversial here, so like please don't be mad at me, but during the original run of Adventure Time, I never found Finn to be the most interesting character, you know? Like I
don't know if anyone did.
I know a lot of people love Finn, and
Finn is like a catalyst to more interesting stories.
Yes, that's how I see it too. And so like getting to explore like the complexities of Simon and like we're saying, right, like his kind of like his state of being now as he is at this point in the story, right? And I want to talk more about like kind of what subtextually that represents. And so I do think that it's more than just these surface level like indications of like, yes, you know, we know that our audience is older now, right? But we're like exploring these themes, right? I think like a big theme that we're obviously looking at in these first two episodes, right, is like depression and like existential mundanity, right?
Listlessness, a feeling of being in a place you don't belong.
Yes, exactly.
Alienating, like Simon's gone like full taxi driver, right? and he hasn't, but like,
yeah,
it's interesting that they're both Fiona and Simon, because that's something else to be said, is that these episodes are divided into two separate stories that connect in one specific thematic way and one specific plot way,
right?
But they're two separate stories. It's not like episode 1 fluidly leads into episode 2. It's like episode 1 is like, here's Fiona, here's what she's doing, and that is brilliant for reasons we can talk about in a second. And then episode 2 is like, here's Simon, here's what he's doing, and then we see hints to at the end of that second episode of how those two stories co-align and come together.
Yeah.
But like Fiona, like I said before, Fiona's like a nothing character in the original series. She's like she's a non-character. She's a joke. She's just a fun one-off, two-off character to bring in for like the gender bent episodes where they can have fun, and it's just the Ice King's imagination or Lumpy Space Princess's imagination. But now Fiona, instead of being introduced by other characters reading about her, Fiona gets to introduce herself.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to see like a completely rewritten, completely revised formula of the character. She's not the off-brand Wish.com Finn that she was in the original series. Now she's just like a regular ass 20-something in a horrible, dingy apartment. They make a reference to Cardcaptor Sakura,
mm-hmm.
And other magical girl anime. That whole opening sequence where she's having a dream of being a magical girl warrior fighting monsters, and Tuxedo Mask comes along and it's fucking Ice Prince.
It's Tuxedo Mask, let's be real.
It has specific shots that mirror Sailor Moon and Cardcaptor Sakura. And Cardcaptor Sakura episode 1 also begins with like a dream sequence of a similar kind before Sakura wakes up to her real life, which is nowhere near as dingy and nasty as the reality that Fiona wakes up to. And she wakes up and there's just like 7 days of dishes that she hasn't done, and like unpaid bills flowing through the letterbox, and like crap everywhere. Her cat's not acting right. Everything's just wrong. It's like, it feels like it resonates with you as an adult viewer, like that dissonance between what you were promised out of life,
right,
and what life turns out to actually be. And then Fiona's own like internal voice, her own way of approaching the world is nothing like what we're used to seeing. And that's what they sort of somewhat try to hide in the trailers, and part of why I didn't care that much for the trailers.
Right.
But as soon as you see her now, she's like the scrungliest, meanest, angriest little,
just like so cynical and so
cynical asshole.
No, and you kind of touched on something that is kind of leading into my second point here, talking about audience, that I kind of want to go into now. So you mentioned like Fiona is kind of this nothing character, right? At least that's how she was introduced, right?
Yeah.
And like what I think you mean, and what I think the show is also kind of saying like when we're saying like Fiona is a nothing character, right? Like she's this character when she's introduced, right? She's like kind of just meant to be this idea, right? Like she's a fan fiction. She's like in universe. She's like not a real character, right? She's like a concept that was come up with by another character that is based on, right, another character that is in the show, right? Like Fiona is meant to be a version of Finn, right?
Like a photocopy of a photocopy.
Exactly. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the meta nature of Fiona as a character. And also this show is playing with like the multiverse, and this concept that has been kind of kind of popular in fiction these days, this idea of multiverse. And I think like a lot of people would argue like, oh, multiverse, it's like being so overdone, it's like another multiverse story, right? And I can totally see that argument. I can see why people are saying that. I personally am a fan of multiverse stories when it's done well, right? Like I can totally understand.
Of the multiverse tainted by fucking Marvel.
Yeah. I think like that's totally fair if you want to criticize that, but like there have been some really good multiverse
idea in its entirety, because like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which sucked, came out in the same year as Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was incredible.
Right.
So
and like I think Spider-Verse, we could argue, is a really good multiverse story, right? And I feel like what makes a good multiverse story versus like a bad one, and take this with a grain of salt because I haven't seen the Marvel multiverse, whatever, but I feel like I would not enjoy it based off of what I know about Marvel. But I feel like what makes a good multiverse story is is that subtext, you know, is asking like, what is this actually functioning within the story? How is this adding to the arc of the characters, right? Like, because story is one thing, plot is one thing, but the thing that draws us as people and the audiences to stories are the characters, right? Can we connect with them? Can we relate to their journeys, right? Do we resonate with their struggles?
Yeah.
And so I feel like a multiverse story is only as good as how is it relating back to the characters, right? And, you know, Spider-Verse, I feel like does a really good job of that with, you know, the multiverse kind of representing like this isolation that they all experience, right? And a lot of other things that, you know, add to these layers.
Yeah.
In Fionna and Cake, I really like this idea of the multiverse, especially because we get at the end of the episode, right? End of episode 2, right? With Cake coming out of the back of Simon's head. I really like this idea
That's a weird sentence.
Right. But I really like this idea of the multiverse in Fionna and Cake kind of being a vehicle for self-reflection in a lot of ways, because think about these 2 episodes too, right? Like these episodes mirror each other in a lot of ways, right? A lot of stuff happens in Simon's world and in Fiona's world.
It mirrored in an inverted way.
Yeah.
That irony of the fact that Fiona is living in basically a facsimile of our world.
Right, like a normal world.
Crappy, and she does shitty bus tours that she hates.
Yeah.
And she's miserable, and she's been dumped by her hot boyfriend.
Yeah.
And she's broke, and she can't afford to look after herself and this cat. And then you got Simon, who's living in like a dreamland full of magic and adventure. But he doesn't fit in either, and he's equally as alienated in that existence.
Right. So there is like a reflection going on between these 2 characters, right? And I feel like this idea of the multiverse and this idea of also Fionna being a manifestation of Simon, right? Like this is a character that he's come up with in his head. I feel like, and the fact that they're going through such similar kind of mental states right now, you know, I really do think like this idea of multiverse and like traveling universes and seeing alternate versions of yourself, right, is kind of playing with this idea of self-reflection and in turn, because Fionna is this like essentially blank slate character, right? She is meant, and I think like Finn in a lot of ways is like this too, but like she is meant to have us kind of project onto her, us as in the audience, right? I can't think of a single person who has watched these episodes, like who are in our demographic, who has not been like, oh, this is deeply relatable. Like I like feel this in the core of my soul, right? Like this is so real and so like grounded. And so I feel like this show is really smart in understanding its audience and also playing with this idea of meta narrative and multiverse and alternate versions of ourselves, right? To kind of play with these themes of self-reflection and looking inward, right? And
in ways that we can't yet fully understand, because we only have a portion of the picture. And like for example, we can say that they mirror each other in sort of inverted ways, but like what that means specifically, neither of us know yet. And I don't think we'll know until the story's over, at least until we get to see Fionna and Simon interact, and like what the actual body of the story will look like. Like, are they going to be, the poster makes it look like they're going to be dimension hopping. But I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. We'll have to see. But it's interesting. Right. And you know, I feel like it also, you talk about meta narrative. I feel like it, particularly in the Fionna episode, more so than the Simon episode, it plays so much with our expectations and our pre-existing knowledge, I think, of certain characters, which kind of makes everything feel like really weird and out of place, because we're so used to hearing these voices and seeing these people doing these wonderful, incredible, magical things. but here they've just been reduced to slop.
Right, exactly, yeah.
In the depressing reality of regular old boring Earth. Who are the characters that we see in Fiona? We see the Queen of Ooh, who has a bus tour.
Oh, is that who that was supposed to be? Okay, because I know Queenie, right? But like, I was supposed to be Queen of Ooh, right?
Queen of Ooh, who is the gender bent king of Ooh. We see Cinnamon Bun, who's like literally just a cinnamon bun. Like, I don't know.
I know. Like, she's just a very rectangularly shaped woman, I think.
We see
so many characters. We see like Abracadanielle. We see like the Banana Guards. We see
that's so funny.
Fern is there too. I love that moment with
because the thing is that you've got both Fern and the grass spirit, who are separate things, because Fern is on the bus and the grass spirit is the one that she meets in the woods.
No, isn't the one that she meets in the woods Huntress Wizard?
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe.
I thought Hunter was Huntress Wizard.
Oh yeah, of course. I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
Everyone cancel me. I'm an idiot. I literally forgot Huntress Wizard even existed.
Marshall Lee was Toon's Gay Awakening, which I don't blame you for whatsoever.
Awakening, if you will.
Awakening.
Yeah, Butterscotch Butler was funny.
Lemon Hope was there too. Lemon Grabs. Oh, the Lemon Grabs were so funny with the dog.
We saw Wildberry Prince / Princess. We saw Starchy, female Starchy, but Starchy
still has a mustache.
Still has a mustache, which is like fair enough. How do you redesign a perfect design?
It's so iconic, yeah.
Don't redesign Starchy. It's not possible.
I think Hot Dog Princess was there too.
Hot Dog Princess, yeah. It was like, I have a dream where I'm a hot dog. Technically Gunther, I guess.
Yeah.
We see the Ice Queen selling ice cream.
Oh yeah, and I think like on her ice cream cart is the mountains from like the Ice Queen's domain or whatever.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what it reminds me of in a weird way. Like, it kind of reminds me of other stories that play with our expectations and play with... God, I hate that this is the only example I can think of, but like, what's it called? It's a terrible movie, and it's directed by Zack Snyder, but that doesn't narrow it down because everything Zack Snyder directs is terrible. What's it called? It's the one with Baby Doll, Sucker Punch, where it's like there are two layers. There's like the fantasy that she's living, and then there's the reality where everything's like an analog to something. And I guess like Life of Pi, to a degree, kind of is like that. Yeah, it all just feels like that's the importance of context, though, isn't it? Because if you're coming into this fresh, you're not going to feel that jarring dissonance between what we've come to expect about the world and the settings that these characters inhabit and what you're seeing on screen. Right. But yeah.
Meta.
Fun is so pretty. It's meta, yeah. The degree to which I don't really know. I don't feel like we have enough information to like comment on that beyond the fact that it really feels like Fiona has been transformed into an audience surrogate.
Yeah, and I feel like the show, and I'm not ready for it yet. I feel like the show is gonna hold up a mirror to us as well too. I feel.
I don't need that.
I don't need that.
In the mirror all the time.
I don't need that in my life.
I don't need that. Damn it.
Actually, speaking of, and kind of like segueing into my second bucket here. Can we talk about the music? Can we talk about how fucking good the songs are? Okay, I know how you feel about that last song and the second episode, and we'll get to that. But I do want to start talking about the first song first, since I have that in my list. And like this idea of the show being deeply relatable. And that first song, right, where we get the kind of sitcom intro to Fiona's life, and what are the lyrics like? Every time I leave my house, I want to die, and I'm just like, oh, that's so real. That's so fucking real. But I love this idea, and there's this show I think is playing sorry, I'm jumping around all over the place. I started with this idea. I said sitcom, and it reminded me of another thing that I wanted to talk about. Okay, so obviously this show is playing with Cheers, right? Like Cheers is the show that they're watching in universe, and like Simon sings the Cheers theme song, right? And
that's the whole Cheers is a whole like leitmotif.
Yeah, and I have not watched Cheers myself, but I feel like this idea of Cheers in the sitcom is going to be a motif that we see often in this show. Because I mean, like even in the second episode when we see Simon living his like museum living exhibit life, right? Like he's literally living without a fourth wall. He's living a sitcom kind of life.
Like, he's living in a set. He's living in like his very own Cheers set. And
yeah,
it's miserable. And Cheers itself kind of deals with with the theme of like escaping the dirge of everyday life.
Yes,
kind of what the overarching theme of Cheers is, and it's in the like you don't actually need to have seen Cheers to get that, because thankfully that's in the lyrics of the Cheers
in the theme song.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you got.
Don't you want to be in a place where everybody knows your name, right? Like, wouldn't that be a nice fantasy to like be in a community?
Yeah. But neither of them have that. Like, it's like they both want it, but neither of them have it. Fiona doesn't seem to have like any friends. Like she's got loads of people she knows, but she has no friends.
Well, that's like the line in the song too, right? Like she has Gary and she has Marshall Lee or whatever, but there's that line in the song too where it's like, even when I'm with my friends, like I feel alone inside. And there's that idea, right, of being disconnected, of feeling like you don't belong in a certain place, right? And I think that's exactly. I think that's a big theme that the show is playing with, and I love that opening sitcom intro for Fiona, because I love the juxtaposition too between like this cheery like da 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 da, da kind of tone, and it's like, oh, I want to die inside. Like, oh, that
reminds me of Cowboy Bebop. It reminds me of the episode.
Bingo card. Everyone pull out your bingo cards and mark the Cowboy Bebop square.
Yeah, I said it, okay. What are you going to do? Kick me off the stream? It's that episode of Cowboy Bebop when we learn about Faye having been cryogenically frozen. And there's like a love song that plays right before like the thing happens. I don't want to give her any spoilers, but like right before the thing happens that turns her into the kind of twisted, cynical asshole that she is. And it sounds like a twinkly, silly love song, but if you listen to the lyrics, they're miserable. It's like love such a joke, like a little Jack in the Box, I think it goes, something like that. And it reminded me of that, where you've got that juxtaposition between expectation and reality, just like the rest of the juxtaposition between expectation and reality.
Yes.
That's going on in the episode as a whole.
Exactly. Yeah. So I loved that that little intro sequence with Fiona, because I feel like that juxtaposition set the tone for the episode, and also like it was such a clever way to like showcase the mundanity of her life, and her going through all these different jobs, and like her not being able to figure out her place in the world. And yeah, I just thought that was really clever, and I definitely teared up a little bit during that first song, so I was like, oh, this is just too real. It's just very relatable. And then of course we get that second song in that episode with Marshall Lee and the guitar, and they didn't have to throw that in. They didn't have to add
by Donald Glover.
Yeah, he is. It's actually Donald Glover, which I'm so happy they got him back, because he's amazing.
There have been some like crucial sort of recasts here and there, some of which I'm happy about, some of which I'm not.
Right.
They got rid of Neil Patrick Harris. Good, fuck him, he sucks. And
the new actor for Gumball is great. He's doing a good job.
But unfortunately, for reasons beyond the actor's control, unfortunately, Kumail Nanjiani has been replaced.
Dude, I saw that on Twitter. I was so sad.
So, he really wanted to do it. Like, yeah, it was not his fault.
So for those of you who don't know, Kumail Nanjiani, who of course voiced Prismo in the original show, he like tweeted being like, "What the hell? I like would have been so down to do this. Like they didn't ask me. Like why did they just recast me?" And then like someone from the show responded being like, "Hey dude, we reached out. We would have loved to have you, and like we never heard back, and we were super bummed about it." So apparently it was his agents or something.
His agents just, like, turned it down. Doesn't it go to speak for how many people all over the place love Adventure Time?
And also, like,
when you've got pretty sizable stars who would have been super happy to be involved. Like sometime last year, you had Hugh Jackman having an interaction with John DiMaggio. Because it was Hugh Jackman wearing a Bacon Pancakes t-shirt and singing the Bacon Pancakes theme. Like everybody loves Adventure Time.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be in Adventure Time. I want to be in Adventure Time. Put me in. I'm not famous though, so it doesn't count.
Right? Yeah.
Unfortunately, that does mean Prismo.
I know.
Prismo is gonna sound a little different.
I'm so sad about that too, because Kumail is like iconic as. I don't think anyone can do it as well as he can. So I'm really bummed about that. That's really unfortunate.
The only way they could somehow make that work, and I doubt this is what they're gonna do, is if they do a gender bent Prismo.
I don't think they are though. I think it's just gonna be Prismo. Yeah.
I think Prismo is an extra dimensional being, so I don't think the gender bent thing applies.
Yeah, that's a bummer, but at least we got Donald Glover and some of the other folks.
At least we got Donald Glover and we didn't get Neil Patrick Harris.
Yes, that is a win. That is definitely a win. But yeah, Marshall Lee's song in the first episode, they didn't have to give us that, but it was awesome and I loved it. Like, I want to like look up the lyrics too, because I don't know, maybe there's some hidden meaning in there somewhere.
And as of right now, I don't think any of these songs have been released properly.
Which they need to get on there.
They need to get on, because I am gonna lose my whole shit. My whole shit is gonna be lost.
It's just completely missing. Nowhere to be found.
Out the window. I'm gonna go insanio style. I'm gonna go sicko mode.
Sicko mode.
I'm gonna go all the way to the friggin' Burbank building, or wherever the hell Cartoon Network is situated, and I'm gonna walk in there with a cricket bat with the words crowd control written on it. And I'm going to be like, "Where's the music, Pendleton? Where is it?"
Oh yeah, and of course, as John said in the chat, we didn't get the lemon grab previous voices as well too, which is for the best.
Yeah. Oh no, what a shame.
Oh yeah, Marshall Lee like laying down in positions like he's floating. That was really great. Yeah, no, but I'm super glad they got
really funny. It would have been really funny if like every show Justin Roiland was working on outside of just Solar Opposites, they replaced him with Dan Stevens. just for like they make it work canonically that he sounds so different in Solar Opposites. I don't want them to do that with any of the other shows. I just want all of the characters to have that voice. Just inexplicably have that voice. And they just never mention it. They never account for it in any way. That would have been very funny.
That would have been funny, yeah. Yeah. Okay, and then of course that last song, right? The song that we get from Simon at the end of episode 2. Damn, that fucking song.
I was not ready for that. I wasn't expecting Rebecca Sugar to come back. Like the last big thing I remember Rebecca Sugar doing was Obsidian, Distant Lands Obsidian, which was amazing. Obviously.
I loved Obsidian, yeah.
Obviously, I liked Obsidian more than having now actually seen Together Again in full. I still think Obsidian is better.
Yeah.
I was not expecting Rebecca Sugar to come back for this. It makes sense that she did, but like she's been a hermit for so long. She like occasionally comes back to do songs for other things, but without credit. She didn't take credit for her contribution to what is it, Amphibia. And then just like I was already sold at this point. Like this is like the last thing in the second episode. And then that song starts playing and her voice starts singing. And this is a true account of events that definitely actually happened. I stood up and I vomited everywhere, like projectile vomited all over my room. I cried. I jumped out of a window onto a speeding taxi. And now I'm dead, and that's Rebecca Sugar's fault, to be honest.
Rebecca Sugar is a criminal.
Be held accountable for that. She's a criminal. In all seriousness, though, like, ah, ah, ah!
Yeah, just screaming. This
is what it was like when we saw Rebecca Sugar's TikTok thing. We just screamed like that for 20 minutes.
Yeah. No, it's really nice to see Rebecca Sugar again. I mean, I think like Tom can probably like say this more articulately, but like she's just a genius when it comes to music and songs. Like she like I'm gonna butcher this. Obviously Tom can probably talk with a little bit more authority here. You can see his guitar in the back and everything, but you know, Rebecca Sugar, you know, she pulls a lot of her inspiration from jazz and like bossa nova,
all over the place, really. Like her musical inspirations are so broad. Like she specifically picked Ivy and Surashu, who did the soundtrack for Steven Universe, with her. Like obviously she wrote a lot of songs for that too.
Yeah.
But like she picked them, I think, specifically because of their video game covers of stuff like Lonely Rolling Star from Katamari Damacy and stuff like that. And you know, she obviously loves chiptune and Steven, like every character in Steven Universe has their own sound. So Steven is very chiptune oriented. Amethyst is very inspired by the music of a game that has come back into the collective consciousness because of the release of another game called Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, and that game is, I'm stalling here, I've forgotten what the name of the game is. What is it called?
I have no idea.
Jet Set Radio.
Okay.
And I think she even said in a Reddit AMA that Jet Set Radio is Amethyst's favorite soundtrack, or like favorite music ever. And Pearl is where you begin to get those classical and
the piano,
neoclassical and jazz roots come through. Like a lot of the Pearl songs are very jazz oriented.
Yes.
It's Over, Isn't It? Is basically just a jazz standard.
Yeah.
But then so is Love Like You. That's just like a jazz standard. It's beautiful, like all over the place. But I noticed she has a particular kind of love for bossa nova. Like often when she writes a song that's just her writing a song that she can sing, she tends to default to bossa nova, and I speculate that has something to do with her mother's background being a modern dancer, because bossa nova is like samba, it's, you know, Latin American modern dance music, and it has just that. Rebecca Sugar really likes to use really interesting chord voicings. She uses like sevenths and ninths and suspended chords and just like stuff that sounds really mellow and bluesy, and all of that really comes through in her musical contribution to that second episode.
Yes.
The song called Part of the Madness, which like I get this feeling listening to some of her songs. I don't know if you get this. Like I get this feeling listening to some of her music where
all the time
it's like my heart goes into my throat.
Yeah. She's just so good at messing with your emotions. I don't know how she does it.
Asshole.
I don't know how she does it. She's a criminal. No, but like, yeah, I do want to talk more about that song as well too, because like when I was like rewatching it again and like listening to the words and like, you know, obviously there's that surface level interpretation that we can take away from it, right? Like it's a song coming from Simon's perspective, you know, he's obviously longing to be like part of the madness, right? Obviously the Ice King was in a mad state of mind, not in his full faculties, but he also,
it was simpler. That's
it was simpler, right? Exactly.
It's
like life
being a child. It's like transitioning from being a child into being an adult. Like being an adult means you gain agency.
Yeah.
And you gain like selfhood, but it also means you gain all these other awful things that you don't want. Like,
yeah.
when you're a kid, you're too out of it to know how bad things are. Like,
exactly. Exactly. And I feel like that is kind of what the subtext of this song is really saying, right? Like this idea of like, oh, we're like, when I think of like what does the madness mean, like at least in my life, like what does the madness mean? I think of like the madness as like, you know, life is fucking crazy, you know, like life, like people can be really cruel. You know, things can be really unfair, right? Like you can be like completely abandoned and like without any help for a lot of times. And like I feel like when you are a kid, right, like as you were saying, and things are simpler, right, like you don't notice how broken things are, and you don't notice like and like you tend to do have people that want to help you, right, like want to support you, right, whether it's like parents, teachers, adults, right, like generally speaking, there is a system kind of put in place to kind of help you out, right? So like you're not necessarily left to that point of like, oh, you're on your own now, right? And I feel like as you grow up and as you grow older, as you get into adulthood, and as you start to notice like, oh, these systems are actually like deeply flawed, right, and actually are not as secure as I thought they were when I was younger. You know, my brain automatically goes to like fucking Bo Burnham's Inside, like, oh, actually the world is really broken and messed up, and like
I was the funny thing is, coincidentally, I was rewatching RoboCop a couple of nights ago. I rewatched this is relevant, by the way. I was rewatching RoboCop, and I don't know if you've ever seen RoboCop. It is hilarious and horrible, and it'll make you feel sick. But like Paul Verhoeven as a director, he really loves in-your-face social satire. And the RoboCop films are full of these like adverts and newscasts. And like the news is always like really, really over the top shit. Like, oh, you know, an oil rig has exploded or something. There's one in RoboCop 2 where they're like, oh, the nuclear plant in the Amazon has like blown up and like everything's ruined. It's the biggest ecological disaster of all time. And then the newscaster just says something like, oh, they say that every week. And like back in the 80s, that passed for satire. But I was looking at that now, like that's just today.
Yeah.
That's just today. That's what it feels like to scroll through your Twitter feed today. It's like, oh, another several hundred people have died.
Right, exactly.
Horrible disaster that could have been avoided if
exactly.
we had proper infrastructure. And,
exactly.
You know, that's the madness.
Yeah, I feel like the madness is like this awareness, right, of like how messed up the world is. And like we get this part in the song too, right, where like Ice King is like, oh, like I wish I could go back to a time where like I could fly, and like did people like me better that way, right? And like we're seeing the visual, right, which is like that little kid trying to get the thing on the tree, and this magical person is able to like use their magic to help this kid, right? And how like Simon is looking at that, and he's like, I'm not able to do that anymore, right? I don't have my magic. And I don't have that ability to connect with people anymore, right? And he has this line in the episode too, which I think really, for me, continues to paint that picture and highlight this idea of like, you know, we as the audience in kind of Simon's place have grown up and aged up and now are feeling disconnected to the world around us, right?
And the magic is gone.
And Simon has this line where he says like, you know, Finn is like, oh, you're not the only human anymore, right? And Simon says, no, but these are future humans. I can't relate to them. I can't connect with them, right? And to me, that kind of reads as like, oh, I've gotten older. I can't connect with this new generation of kids anymore.
What is it? What is a TikTok?
What is a TikTok? What are these kids like, you know, and especially like in animation too. I think like that's also part of why I think this show is so aware of its audience, because we are adults watching an adult animated show, right? Like adults who watch animation, who have enjoyed animation as they were growing up, right? There is a specific kind of audience that entails, right? And I feel like to some extent, there is a piece of us, at least maybe I'm just speaking for myself, so, you know, feel free to disagree with me, but at least for myself, like there's a part of my childhood that I want to cling on to, right? There's a part of like that escapism, that fantasy, which I think is a part of the show too, right? Like Fiona wanting to escape into fantasy. But I think that us as animation fans, like kind of want to hold on to that like childlike wonder that comes with animation a little bit longer, right? And so this show being an adult animated show specifically through the medium of animation, like I don't think that this show could have worked not animated, right? Not even just in the sense of like the Adventure Time world, but because I think like the animation is part of the speaking to the audience that is like what a big theme of the show is. I feel, I don't know if I'm making sense there, but
no, I agree. I mean, it's like it's magical realism. It's not neorealism.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And Ice King feeling disconnected from this world, I think, is very relatable to us who are fans of animation, right? And like, you know, us watching like the Owl House and Amphibia, right? And like watching these kids watch it and like have all these like different interpretations. Like, oh my gosh, like I can't relate to these kids like at all, right? And it's like, I feel like that's something that Ice King was doing, or Simon is doing in this episode.
You know, when Steven is watching Crying Breakfast Friends with Greg, and Greg is like,
I don't get this.
I must be getting old. I used to like cartoons.
Right? Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
God, yeah, it's so much. I really feel like that the loss of the magic, like the purposeful loss of the magic and the refocusing, even when we're in the Adventure Time world, when we've left episode 1 and we've gone into episode 2, like seeing it through Simon's lens really like drains everything of the magic. It really draws out kind of the horror of everything instead.
Absolutely.
Like when he gets in the space gondola and there's two little weirdos are just like fucking behind him and he's just like quivering, crying into his hands. These like two people are like raw dogging behind him.
Yeah.
It's like it really sucks the magic out, you know, like Adventure Time always felt like a purposeful pastiche of the classic Dungeons and Dragons, Legend of Zelda, high fantasy adventures that we all know, you know, even if you've never played or seen any of those things, or the Jim Henson films, you know, like Dark Crystal, stuff like that. Like even if you've never touched any of those things in your life, they're genre defining, you know?
Exactly.
And so it you recognize it, you know. But Adventure Time always felt like a deconstruction of that because of so many reasons, you know, like you've got these comparatively, even though compared to Simon, a character like Finn comes across as incredibly outlandish, in the context of Adventure Time, Finn comes across as like kind of just like a teen boy, just like a normal teen boy. He's not a large, the way he talks is very millennial, you know.
Right.
And the like the attitude the show has towards a lot of its characters feels very postmodernist and revisionist, even, you know.
Right.
The Princess Peach archetype is transformed into a benevolent despot, mad scientist. You know?
Right. Yeah.
And now they've reached a stage where they're revising the revisionism.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And now the magic is truly dead in the most purposeful way possible. Like, like it's not the magic is dead, like, oh, the magic of Adventure Time is dead and they've ruined it. It's like the magic is dead because we're older now.
Because we're all depressed.
Lie down for a fucking nap.
For real, for real. I'm looking at my notes, making sure. Oh, can we talk about Finn?
Let's talk about Finn, yeah.
Let's talk about Finn.
He's a little older. He's not quite reached Jonathan Frakes yet. He's not quite old enough to be Jonathan Frakes. I wonder where along the line that happens, actually. Is that like, does he have to hit 40 before he becomes Jonathan Frakes?
Yeah.
I don't know, but he's not quite Jonathan Frakes yet. He's just like Jeremy Shada with a voice that has been like slightly toned down.
Yeah.
Finn hasn't changed at all.
Yeah, I think like again there's this idea of like juxtaposition, right? So I think it's super interesting again that we're following Simon in this epilogue series rather than Finn, right? And like Finn, this character who hasn't really changed much. I think at this point in the show Jake has died, right? And so
Jake has died. He's got the Jake memorial tattoo on his chest.
So like it's so interesting to me seeing Finn operate in this way, because there's a part of me that feels like, oh, he's still that like kind of oblivious little boy that we've seen, you know, in the main series. But there's like these little moments that we get with him, right? With him just sort of like taking a beat or like looking at Simon and like not saying anything, which makes me just like question. I'm like, is this just a deeply broken man who has absolutely no idea how to navigate his emotions like whatsoever? Because like there's that moment, right, where he's like, I love fixing people, and then it's just like silence for a moment. It's okay, like, well, bye. Yeah, and it's just like, okay, do you really believe that you yourself are fixed and you're actually able to fix people? You know what I mean? So there's a funny and sad juxtaposition there between like what Finn is trying to do and what he's actually able to do, right? And I think that's also very grounded in a lot of ways.
Finn is not a complex boy.
No, yeah.
You know, like Finn and Jake, these are themes they started to tease out as early as the episode when Kim Kil-won possesses their house.
Right.
You know, and Kim Kil-won has a conversation with his wife, because Kim Kil-won is like the absolute poster child of like functioning adult. And he says to his wife, like, I really thought doing this would put a fire under him and really get him going. But he also says to her in that same breath that he's kind of realized that his dad is never going to change and this is just the person that he is, and that he just lives life through this simple lens, and he's somehow found a way to make that work for him.
Yeah.
And I think the same can be said of Finn. I don't think Finn's ever going to change out of this boy, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe that's fine. Maybe Finn isn't broken. Maybe Finn is functioning exactly as Finn was always meant to function.
Well,
it's just that Simon and the emotions that Simon is feeling are way beyond Finn's purview. Like, the few times Finn encounters a problem he can't punch, his first instinct is to punch it, and then if that doesn't work, he just breaks.
Yeah.
Like, Finn just breaks.
Well,
like,
yeah,
the whole thing with his dad. His first solution with his dad is like, oh, I'm going to build a tower and punch him and steal his arm. And then Princess Bubblegum has that whole thing that she does where she proves to him that punching him doesn't solve anything. And then he just spends some time just like broken, just like depressed.
And I think like, you know, John has a good thing here in the chat where they say saw someone say it's cool that Finn's going on adventures with Jake's kids, and another one said maybe he's trying to replicate his connection with Jake. And I think like what you're saying kind of falls into that, right, where he kind of has this like default mode almost, right, where it's like even though Jake's gone, his kind of default is to like, oh, I'm gonna like go on adventures, right? And even like when he is approaching with Simon, right, he's like, oh, what you need is going on a quest, right? I feel like that's just kind of like what he defaults to.
I don't want to smear Finn too much.
No, and this is not to say it's bad. Yeah,
the Finn smearing show, because like I think there are lots of ways you can interpret the fact that he's taken in TV in this case specifically.
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense that it's TV specifically, because TV is the one who I think most needs a guidance figure.
Right.
The rest of them all seem to have things pretty much figured out. Like, you couldn't imagine on adventures with Kim Kil-won or with Jake Jr. They all pretty much have things figured out. They're doing their own thing. Most of them already have kids. TV is the one who spent all of the time at home and only began to really sort of become his own character towards the end of the series.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that he would do that. But I think also, like, think about it from the perspective of Finn is like kind of like he's a godfather to them. And in that sense, he's the closest thing to a father that TV has.
Yeah.
In the absence of Jake. So, you know, I think there's a lot going on behind that. I think it's interesting, isn't it, when we have these like follow-up series, same with Steven Universe, how a little twist in perspective and a little critical distance can completely reframe how we feel about a character.
Right.
Because we look at Finn and we're like, wow, this guy is like woefully unequipped to deal with anything in life more complex than going to a dungeon and hitting a thing.
Right.
And it's the same with Steven. Like, you get a little distance and you're like, oh, hang on. This kid is saying that things are fine a little too often for my taste. Things are clearly fine, and you start getting flashbacks to Bubble Buddies when he keeps saying like, oh, it's okay, everything's okay, and it's like,
right,
still doing that, even though he's an adult now, and he's still doing that thing. Completely reframing. But isn't that what all of this is about? It's like reframing life.
Yeah.
On behalf of the audience, who are now presumably spat out into the uncaring world.
Right. Yeah. No,
and we've
totally.
got a new perspective on things. But Steven Universe Future has a beautiful ending, like a soul-rending ending, but it still has an ending that's like, actually, life is a mess. People are complicated. But that doesn't mean you can't make something good out of it.
Yeah.
And it just takes a little time. Just a little time.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's what we'll see coming with Fionna and Cake. But we don't know because we're only 2 episodes in.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking at my notes here. There's one more thing that I kind of want to bring up, and this idea of escapism. And both, as we talked about, right, both of these episodes are kind of reflections of each other, inverses of each other in a lot of ways, right? And to me, it's really interesting, and I'm so curious to see how, once Fionna and Simon interact, like how this is going to play out. But it's so interesting to me the ways both Fionna and Simon use escapism as their like method of coping. And at the beginning of the first episode, we see Fionna having that dream sequence of her fantasy, right? Like her fighting the evil guy and saving the day and all that stuff. Exactly, yeah. And we see that fantasy escapism, right? And then in Simon's dream in the beginning of episode 2, we see a flashback of the past of him and Marcy. And later on in that episode, the one moment where we get from him where he seems like genuinely at peace for like a fraction of a moment is when he's making coffee.
When he's making coffee.
Yeah, when he's making coffee.
I was going to say when he's on the phone, like there's like a brief moment before the phone conversation with Marcy goes off the rails.
Yeah.
He's like so close to just being honest with someone.
Yeah. But there's that moment where he's making the coffee with Finn, right? And he's like, "Oh, I'm going to use the eggshells to separate the coffee." And he seems like
something he's good at.
Yeah. And he's like, "Oh, I used to be an outdoorsman at one point," right? Because he's thinking about the past. He's thinking about like his previous life, right? And I just find that so. And then it's eventually then he remembers Betty, and that's what kind of brings him back into this funk, right? He's like, "Oh, but I used to do that with Betty," and then he's back to being depressed, and that's when Finn's like, "Oh, why don't you get us some firewood or whatever," right? But what I'm trying to say is that
what the fuck happened to Choose Goose?
Oh yeah, what did happen to him? I don't remember what happened to him at the end of the show that made him all fucked up and weird like that. So someone who remembers the lore will need to fill me in on that because I don't remember what happened to him. But I just find it interesting that Fionna is kind of using fantasy as this method of escape, and Simon is using the past as this method of escape, right? He's like retreating back into his memories. And, at the end of the episode, we see him doing that ritual with Golb. And again, someone who knows the lore better will need to remind me about like what exactly is going on there. But I think he's like trying to bring.
He's trying to get Betty back.
Right. Yeah. He's trying to get her back. Right. And so I feel like this show is going to be, and this is kind of like my theory, which is actually kind of what I wanted to end the stream with a little bit, is kind of talking about, I know like Tom talking about lore and theory is not necessarily your favorite thing, and it's not necessarily my favorite thing either, but I do find it fun. So I wanted to reserve a little corner for talking about theories and stuff like that. But I do kind of have a theory of, at least thematically, what I think this show is going to be about. I think we're going to deal with grief. I think we're going to deal with Simon dealing with his loss of Betty. Him trying to bring her back. I think like if the show is kind of going in the direction I think it's going, I feel like we're probably not going to get Betty back by the end of the series. I feel like
it's not looking good for old Betty.
It's not looking good for us.
Not looking good for old Betty. But then, like, it also raises a lot of questions about what the nature of Fiona's world is, because is that world like an alternate dimension that's created out of the residual magical energy of the Ice King and of Simon that has manifested it into a pocket dimension that Fiona and Cake will then be spat out of? I don't know, because there's that big statue to Betty in the park.
Yeah.
And they're like, who is that statue of? And Fiona's just like, I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
I don't fucking know. She says it in that exact voice.
Exactly, yeah. According to Zachamels, apparently Choose Goose drank the blood of a primordial monster at the end of Distant Lands. I don't remember that.
That doesn't make sense, because I did that the other day, and I'm like, fine.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I don't know. Why are you laughing?
Yeah, so who knows what happened there. But yeah, anyway, so I think, okay, so here's my little theory corner. Okay, this is Covey's theory corner. We're gonna play around with lore and theory for a moment here. Just bear with me.
Should I get a book?
Yeah, get the book. So I think, yeah, I think we're gonna try to get Betty back, but I highly doubt we're gonna be successful. So I think it's also pretty clear, and I think we can probably definitively say this at this point based off of the visual clues, but I think we can safely say that Fiona's world is like inside Simon's mind at to some capacity, right? I don't know how to what capacity it really exists. I don't know, because, you know, like you said, we saw that statue of Betty, right? And then we see the visual of on Simon's desk, right? He has that statue with the like glasses on it, and then like there's these.
It's like Helga's shrine to Arnold.
That's right. Yeah, it's very similar. But right, there's all these like visual connections, right? That connect Simon's world and Fiona's world. And then of course at the end of the second episode, when Cake literally jumps out of Simon's head, right? I think that's a pretty big clue as to Fiona's world existing within Simon's mind. And I think like Prismo is obviously going to play some role in this, right? We saw the television remote at the shot of that.
Yeah.
How exactly that is going to play into everything, I'm going to be so curious. Like, are we going to go back?
That also plays into that like meta narrative leitmotif of viewership and
yeah, exactly. Literally watching it on the TV, right? Like we as the audience are this like surrogate in a lot of ways. So yeah, and like, are we going to go back to like the other worlds that we've seen before in the show? Like there was that farm boy world and like the lich not existing world, right? Like, is the lich gonna come back? Like, who knows? Like, I don't know. There's all this crazy stuff that could potentially happen that I'm curious and excited
to hear Ron Perlman's voice again. He's so
good. Yeah, for sure. And then this I feel like is a little bit of an obvious one, but I would be remiss if I did not bring this up. But I just have a bullet point in my notes that says Chekhov's animal translator collar, which basically means I think that the animal collar that Simon pulled off the dog in episode 2 is going to end up on Cake probably in the next episode. That is my guess. And if that doesn't happen, I will be very disappointed because I feel like they set that up pretty clearly. So
yeah, I feel like that's telegraphed pretty strongly.
Yeah. So I feel like that is probably going to happen. But I'm curious if you have any. I know that that's not how you typically approach media or shows like this, but I'm curious if you have any like predictions or theories about like how the show is going to go. And in the chat as well too, if anyone wants to share their theories.
I mean, what the fuck do I know? Like, it ended up the show itself has ended up being absolutely nothing like what I thought it would be.
Right. Yeah.
I have no idea. It's just simply not the way I watch media, I suppose. I think there are certain things you've already touched upon. I don't think Betty's coming back.
Right.
I think she's pining for the fjords, as they say.
Right.
Pining for the fjords. I don't know. I only know what I hope to see, I guess. I hope we get to see more of Marcy, because obviously I hope we see more of Bubblegum because she's my fave.
Yeah.
God. Simon seems like he's going down some dark avenues, to be honest. I guess he kind of is going full Taxi Driver, because he's got all of these like complicated feelings and he's very, very lonely. And his solution to that is to toy with dark magic, which is, shooting up a brothel, toying with dark magic. They're like kind of the same thing if you think about it.
Oh my gosh. The Adventure Time version of shooting up a brothel.
Well, Adventure Time does have an episode that's literally a beat for beat homage to the film Dog Day Afternoon.
It's true, yeah.
A 1970s noir film.
Yeah, yeah.
So is Simon going to start like becoming incredibly racist over the next several episodes and start harboring some like really extreme thoughts, and he's going to lose loads of sleep and start like waxing poetic about the people he sees at night?
Oh man, I did not expect Fionna and Cake to go in this direction. Wow.
He's using some really horrible words to describe gay people.
Oh my god.
Wow. He actually gets a job working the magical gondola.
Oh my god.
And he has to wash the blood and the cum off the back seat every night.
Oh god.
I mean, that's what happens. They fuck in the back of the
That is what happens gondola. In the episode. That is true.
Oh my god, we're blowing this wide open. It's Taxi Driver.
Oh my god.
Shit.
Watch there be an actual Taxi Driver reference like in an upcoming episode too.
It's one of those things that I would simultaneously be thoroughly surprised and thoroughly not surprised, because like on one hand, Taxi Driver, on the other hand, it's one of the most famous and beloved films ever made.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, Taxi Driver. But then on the other hand, they did do an episode that was literally just an homage to Dog Day Afternoon. So what the hell do I know?
So who knows? Who freaking knows? Do we think that like Finn and Fiona are gonna meet? Because they've never met before, right? Obviously not, but
I mean, they can't. In a way, they have, or at least from Finn's perspective, we get like a vague simulation of what it would be like if they did meet in the episode with the weird bunny.
Oh, that's right. I don't remember that. That's right. Yeah.
To be Fiona, and he like meets her, and he's like, "Wow, I have so many questions," and I don't know.
I feel like I feel like
that really depends on how long the story stays located in Ooh, or if it's going to start dimension hopping to other places.
Right. Yeah. Because I feel like I would really like to see that. I feel like a scene between Fiona and Finn, because I think again, if we're going to be playing with these themes of reflection and introspection, I feel like that would make a lot of sense to me. I don't know if we're going to it would be fun for sure to see like Marshall Lee and Marceline interact, or like Gary and Bubblegum interact, but I feel like most likely if we're gonna get counterparts interacting with each other, I feel like it's most likely gonna be Fiona and Finn.
Yeah, because like where Marshall Lee is just like fun, Fiona is a car crash.
Yeah.
Fiona is a car crash, and it's like, hey, look, Finn, this is what you'd be like if you couldn't hold a job down for longer than 3 weeks.
Do you think like Finn...
You had to pay bills.
Do you think like Finn will see Cake and just like have a breakdown and just finally snap because he misses Jake or whatever?
Okay, so now you're saying that Finn is gonna go full Taxi Driver.
Right.
And seeing Cake...
I feel like he's on the brink of something. Like I feel like he's teetering on the edge. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but...
He's going to try to assassinate a New York senator for reasons he doesn't fully understand.
Yeah, exactly.
We're blowing this whole thing wide open. This is
exactly what's going to happen, yeah.
You heard it here first. When this happens...
You'll know. We predicted the future.
We are geniuses. We're like we're just the smartest people ever.
The smartest, exactly.
See, I haven't actually seen Wizard City. I stopped after I kind of when what's it called, Together Again first debuted. I wasn't like thrilled with it, and I don't know if that's because I didn't like it or if it's because it unfortunately happened to come out during my dissertation period of my MA.
Right. Yeah.
And I just like couldn't engage with it. I don't think it hit, like, the first 20 minutes didn't hit the emotional beats I expected and kind of hoped.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I rewatched it in full and thought it was cool, but I
Yeah.
still haven't seen Wizard City.
Yeah,
So
I think Wizard City.
If Choose Goose got fucked in Wizard City, then
that would explain it.
Is that the one where Choose Goose goes off the rails and tries to assassinate a New York senator?
I guess so. And then
like shoots up a brothel at the end.
Yes, that's how it goes. There's a lot of brothel. There's a lot of brothel death in Adventure Time.
Yeah, way more brothels than I remember on a first viewing.
Oh my gosh.
Choose Goose, as voiced by Robert De Niro. Directed by Martin Scorsese.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. All right.
See, this is the quality commentary you all come here for.
The quality. All right. Well, that's basically all I had in my notes, more or less. Yeah, I'm really loving the show so far. I'm really excited for the next episodes. Yeah, so just a heads up to everyone watching the stream. Today we're doing it on Monday because it's a holiday. Oh, by the way, today is Labor Day. Shout out to laborers. I did hopefully let's see if this actually works. I did create a new command in the chat. Let's see if it actually works. But I wanted to create a thing in the chat because since we're talking about media and TV shows, and obviously Fionna and Cake is an animated show, so it doesn't fall under the strikes that are going on right now with the WGA and SAG-AFTRA and everything. And apparently my thing isn't working, but oh my gosh. Anyway, all that to say, support creators, support writers, laborers, shout out to laborers here on Labor Day. But as I was saying, today it's Monday. We're doing this stream, but as we are going forward, we will be doing this on Sundays, most likely. I'll confirm that. But yeah, probably going forward, we'll be doing this on Sundays. So just a heads up.
Sundays are our normal kind of day.
Yeah. So just a heads up. It's just for this week that it's Monday. Just because. How do you like all my new stream stuff, by the way? I created this kind of hastily in the middle of the night last night, but
I mildly contributed.
Yeah, you helped as well with you gave me the BMO idea, which I thought was cute.
Did you end up using that for anything, or did you just
I just recreated it.
Just recreated it. Cool.
Yeah. But
if I'd actually saved the original document, it would have been more helpful. But I didn't because I'm an idiot.
It is what it is. But yeah, happy Labor Day. Going forward, we'll be going back on the weekend. So just a heads up for all of y'all. But that's pretty much all I wanted to say for today. I'm really loving the show so far. I'm really excited to see where it goes. I'm ready to get my emotions fucked with and I'm ready to figure out what the answer to all this is, honestly. Because
how disappointing will it be for you if there is no answer?
Okay, guys, bring out your bingo cards. So I'm about to talk about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There's a lot of themes here that remind me of Buffy the Vampire Slayer season 6. But one of the things that really disappointed me about, Buffy season 6 and season 7 is that I feel like the conclusion to it did not give me a satisfying answer to the problems that even Fionna and Cake are highlighting here, right? Like the mundanity of life, the existential dread of doing the same thing over and over again each and every day, right? And just having depression and trying to navigate the world of, feeling like you're an outsider. Buffy deals with a lot of these themes, but it did not give me a good answer as to okay, what am I actually supposed to do with all these feelings? So I'm excited to see what Fionna and Cake is going to teach me about how to deal with my existential dread, because yeah, I feel like this show is definitely holding up a mirror not only to Fionna and Simon, but also to us as the audience. So it's gonna teach us some things, and I don't know if I'm ready for it.
I don't think there is an answer.
I don't think there's an answer, but Fionna and Cake has to go somewhere. So, but yeah, I think that is all I've got for today. Tom, do you have anything else you want to say before we wrap things up?
I have nothing else I want to say to these people. They know what they did.
They know what they did. You all know what you did. You all know. But yeah, we can continue the discussion in the Discord server as well. If you would like to join, come hang out with us. And then we'll be back next week to continue talking about the new episodes as they come out. And this is going for like 5 weeks, right? So we'll be just going until the series ends. So
we'll be going until either the series ends or one of us dies in a Taco Bell related incident.
Exactly.
Whichever one comes first.
Exactly, whichever one comes first. Yeah, we're gonna be wrapping up for now, Robin. The VOD will be available on my channel. What else do I want to say? I feel like I'm stalling at this point. Or I also feel like I'm forgetting something.
You've forgotten to talk about your merch store.
I wish I had a merch store. I'm not that cool yet.
Forgotten to talk about your book signing.
That's right. No, but subscribe, all that good stuff, notification, like, blah blah blah, all that good stuff. Subscribe to Tom's channel as well too. Tom's working on a really awesome video right now that I'm super excited to see when it comes out. It's gonna be amazing.
I have no idea how long it's gonna take before that happens, but I am working on a huge Steven Universe video. Like, it's gonna be over an hour long.
I'm so excited. It's gonna be amazing.
And it's consumed my every waking thought for the last several weeks. And it's gonna be so dope. It's gonna be so dope. I'm so proud of it already. And I'm only like 20 minutes in. But it's gonna be so dope. I've been living that Steven Universe brain rot.
Yeah.
It's not there anymore to be viewed, but I did post in my Discord. I posted the first 8 minutes. Kind of drum up hype for people, but you can't watch that anymore because my Google Drive ran out of space.
Oh, no.
So I'm sorry, you missed your chance.
But I don't know, the exclusive sneak peek is gone.
Maybe
now.
if you all aren't in, I don't know. Maybe you guys can sound out in Covey's Discord if you want to see the first 8 minutes, and I can like repost it, and you can post it in your Discord on my behalf.
Yeah, if you want me to share.
If people want to see the first 8 minutes.
Yeah, but we're excited for that video. So subscribe to Tom's channel, Curmudgeon Media. Get that video in your feed. Oh my god, stop. Anyway, yes, we're all very excited. Exactly, Tune. All right, well, we had a really good crowd for today's stream. I really appreciate everyone turning up and adding your comments in the chat. It was really awesome to interact with all of you again and to chat with all of you and catch up and talk about cartoons. It's always really nice to check in with all of y'all. So thank you all again so much for hanging out and tuning in. We'll be wrapping up for now, and we'll see you next week. Stay safe and take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.